Hi everyone, welcome to my next video. Many of you have asked if I would share some of my experiences with online dating. And so this is it. I'm going to share some strange, some funny, and some sad stories that happened to me when I was 50 years old. So that's 20 years ago when I joined a popular dating website. I'm not going to tell you which one it was, but it was the most popular one way back in 2005, which, gosh, I can't believe it's that long ago. And the reason why, looking back, I now understand why I chose to join that online dating website. And I believe it's because so many of us, we're lonely. We want to find someone compatible. It's only natural to find that special someone, especially if we've had relationships in the past that didn't work out. And so that was me. And I lived in New Hampshire. So I thought, why not? I had a friend take a picture of me, a very simple, dressed in jeans, leaning against the fence by my horse barn. And I had very long hair back then. It wasn't at all the way it is now. So I guess I looked even younger than 50. But I didn't lie about my age. And I wrote a very simple profile. And that was that. Well, the minute my profile went live, I was bombarded by interested men. And I don't think that happened because of my picture or my profile, but I think that's the mindset of these dating websites for many of these men, and maybe even women, to just target someone new before they find a date. And I don't remember how many requests I got or how many, I think it was even emails. Stop it, Maggie, no. But I was really taken aback by so many responses. And so I chose a few to respond to and shared a couple of emails. Yet, all the while, I could see that some of them were just really probably what they told every other woman too, right? Walks on the beach, all of that nonsense that I wondered if they even did for real. Living life to the fullest was a very common phrase. And I would shy away from anyone who said that because that doesn't mean anything. If you live life to the fullest, then tell me what it is you do. And don't use such a phony canned phrase. So I kind of weeded out some of those. And then I ended up being interested in quite a few. Now here's kind of a funny story because I lived in a very quiet town with not very many public restaurants in the area. But I decided to meet one gentleman at a local, very small sandwich place. I don't even think it was open at night. It was just a lunch place. Very casual. And I met him there for lunch. And he was a nice guy. But I have to be physically attracted to someone before I really want to develop a relationship. And it just wasn't there. And I don't think he felt the same for me either. I wasn't sure. Maybe it was the way I was acting that was kind of off-putting. But that was our one and only date. And I went home. Well, the following week, another man popped up on the website. And I decided, which was a mistake, to meet him at the same restaurant, right? Now, I don't remember what the waitress said, but it was the same waitress. And I was a little concerned when I saw her because I was afraid she might say something. And she actually did. And I don't remember if she said, "Oh, you've brought another one," or "Are you going to order the same thing you had last week?" But my date was instantly offended. And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, so this is where you bring all your guys? To the same restaurant, huh?" And actually, it was the same table. And I felt awful because I should never have done that. So that date went nowhere. And I never did that again. I never brought any dates to that same restaurant. And I don't know if the waitress even did that on purpose or not. I don't think she did. But I will never forget that. And I felt bad for the guy. So then I met maybe a dozen men over the course of 6 months. I met him at a pizza place. And this one was sad because although he sounded interesting in his profile and he was clearly interested in me, when I met him at the pizza place, I wasn't attracted to him either. And even though I'd seen his picture, I realized that the picture was old. It was not an up-to-date photo at all. And that really angers me when someone is that dishonest and posts an old picture. And that's one reason I wanted to meet him in person, to find out if this was really who he really was. Always in a public place. And his eyes lit up when we met, and I could tell that he really liked me. But there was no physical attraction, and we shared eating the pizza, which was delicious. And I was my usual entertaining self. But deep down, I felt bad for the guy, and I thought, how am I going to get out of this? Because he clearly wants to see me again. And I don't feel comfortable, but I have to tell him in not so many words that I'm not interested. But I don't want to come out and say that. That's too hurtful. So I think there was a small band that was actually getting set up to play country and western, actually, which is not any music that I'm interested in. And I could see that he wanted to stay, and he wanted to order me a glass of wine, and I declined. So I finished the pizza, and he asked to see me again. And I said, I don't remember exactly what I said, but I did not lead him on. But I said something to the effect of, I think I'm really busy, I'll get back to you. And that was that. I never saw him again. And I did feel bad about that. But again, a first date is just to meet anyway. And it's not a love at first sight kind of thing. Although I did have that experience when I was 19. And maybe I was looking for that again. Maybe I was hoping to be in love again. And maybe he was too. But there's so many lonely people on these websites, and I learned as I met more men. Met one in a park, and I think we were just walking when he admitted that he was still married. And I hid my anger because I thought, who is this guy? Thinking that he can date other women while he's still married? What a creep. So I left him at the park and went home. Thank goodness I didn't tell him where I lived. And I'm sure I blocked him on the website after that. And I realized that some of these men on there, and even women, are probably really married. But they're not going to tell you that. But thank goodness this man did. And I could tell he seemed a little nervous and a little unsure of himself. And I'm not attracted to men like that. Anyway. So that went nowhere. Now here's an interesting one. Because I did meet someone online who had a very interesting profile, and he seemed to be legit. And I think it was a couple of weeks before I agreed to a phone call. And believe it or not, I have never done this before. But when he called me at 6 o'clock, we talked until 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was really funny. And we had a great time. But I found myself becoming too involved with the man on the phone. And I should never have done that. And he ended up supposedly having very strong feelings for me. And I put an end to it immediately. realizing that that phone call should never have been 8 hours long. And I had done it more out of boredom than anything else. And I learned about myself that meeting these men is not a wise thing to do, because all of these men were more lonely than I was. I did speak to many more, but honestly, I don't remember. Even if I met them, I don't think I did. And I ignored the majority of the messaging that went on that website, because they were very flattering. A lot of them used the same canned, I love to walk on the beach kind of nonsense. Well, first of all, you're in New Hampshire. There's not a whole lot of beaches, so which beach do you go to? And the other one, which I really found overused, was how they would claim that they live life to the fullest. And that was ridiculous, because if you live life to the fullest, you don't have to use that ridiculous, overly used expression. Just tell me what you do. Tell me what you like to do. And tell me what you did last weekend. Be honest, because I can tell a liar. Well, that's a way to weed through them, which I did. So in the event, I stopped being on that website. But here's a tip. I did log in on a New Year's Eve, which was a huge mistake, because I received more responses than ever. Because obviously, if you're logging onto a website on New Year's Eve, everyone knows you don't have a date, right? And you know that they don't either. And you're going to meet the most desperate people on New Year's Eve without a date. So I quit doing that, and I quit that website altogether. Now I'm going to end this video with the worst man that I ever met, including my ex-husbands. And I think it was the universe teaching me the lesson that I had yet to learn, because I met the most violent, repulsive narcissist that I have ever met in my entire life. And I should have known, but I was lonely. And he was a local guy. He was a logger. And I met him just by chance. And he invited me to his home for dinner, which was nearby, with his family. Divorced. Invited his son, his grown son, his wife, and his two tiny grandchildren who were just infants. And I was really taken, in particular, with this man. And looking back, I understand why. Because he had a family. And I had never experienced having a family before. And I think being invited to his log house out in the woods, meeting his family and having dinner, was extremely appealing to me, and gave me the possibility of being involved in someone's family. And I think that was the pull, looking back. However, I will never forget sitting at that table and feeling that there was something very, very dark in that house. And what was dark was this man, because everyone at the table catered to him with such a subtle fear that it emanated in the very air that I was breathing. And he had cooked a delicious meal, and even made my favorite dessert, which is chocolate cake. Yet his family was very guarded, very polite, very attentive to me. Yet I sensed that they were doing so because he had told them to. And I dated him for maybe 10 days until I heard the riffraff about this guy, how he had been extremely abusive to his previous ex-wives and to his own family. And it was actually Christmas time, and he had bought me a huge, huge, giant wreath to put on my back door. Very expensive wreath. And I remember putting it in my truck and driving it to his house and giving it back to him and saying, here, I don't want it because it reminds me of you. I don't want anything to do with you. I'm glad I met you because you're not someone that I want to date anymore. Should I have done that? No. But I was so disgusted by his false persona that I felt better after I returned that wreath. Well, I'm going to leave you in closing at the end here in my video how this man ties into online dating. Because shortly thereafter, a friend called me and she said, hey, Barbara, you'll never believe who's created an online profile and who's looking for women. And lo and behold, it was this guy, the same guy, the violent, abusive narcissist with a criminal history, believe it or not, which I found out later also. And I got online and I couldn't believe what he had written about himself. The whole thing was a pack of lies. And I don't even think he could have written it himself, because it was all about how he was empathetic and caring and respectful and insightful, and he was looking for a woman because he had been so mistreated in his life that all he wanted to do was find true love. Ha! Now, it alarms me how many women probably responded to him, and how many women found out, hopefully before it was too late, like I did, how dangerous this man really was. But it also made me realize how many other people are on these websites, men and women included, who portray themselves to be the opposite of who they really are. And that was the clincher for me, and I realized that I was done dating. I had not listened to my intuition because, again, I think the pull of feeling that family bond, wanting to be part of his family, thinking, gee, if this really worked out, I might have a family in that way. But deep down, I knew it was wrong. And I'm glad that I learned early on, before I saw this guy's real temper, because I learned later some really, really violent things he had done. Now, before I forget, after, I guess we broke up, even though I didn't really date him for very long. He started, I call it narcissistic hoovering, which I created a video about some previous friends here in Maine. Because this man started with the hang-up phone calls. And his caller ID was private name, private number. But obviously it was him, because he would call and he would not say anything. And I knew it was him, and I would just hang up. Then he would start with the drive-bys. And he had a diesel pickup truck. So I could hear it coming down the road. I lived on a very, very desolate dirt road. Had a few neighbors, but they weren't very close by. And I could hear his truck coming, and I knew it was him. And once he pulled in my driveway and just sat there with the engine running. But I did not get out of my truck, and back then I had a Rottweiler who I could have let out. And this guy kept up this behavior, believe it or not, for 2 years, harassing me. At one point, I did get a restraining order because it became too frequent. And I'm quite sure he was doing it to other women too. Now, since then, I've moved away, and I do believe that if he knew where I was today, he would probably start up again, because he's a mentally delusional person. Now, that's the end of my dating history, because I have not dated anyone since. I don't plan to. And if I do meet some old guy who has a fishing boat or likes to go hiking, I will be extremely reserved about it. I will never live with anyone again, and I will most certainly never get married again. I'm too happy. I'm too secure. My life is perfect. Who needs that? But I see so many lonely women like me thinking maybe this is our last chance at love. And maybe if we try again, we might find that special person. And maybe some do by these online websites. But I learned a lot. I'm glad for the experience. And I just thought it would be interesting to share with some of you. I do feel bad for the men that I did meet that I was not interested in. But I always was very polite and very cordial. I never insulted them. And I never ever, especially with that guy who we spoke to with each other on the phone for 8 hours, I ultimately told him, good luck. Good luck on the website. And I think that was the way I ended that. And so, yeah, I'm glad I tried it. I'm glad I did it. It's all experience. It was 20 years ago. Now, I believe there's probably background checks you can do now on people. That is, if they use their own name, which half of them probably don't. And I'm sure many of them don't even use an up-to-date picture. But if you hear they enjoy walks on the beach and they live life to the fullest, please skip right over them, because they're just trying to bait you. And they probably don't do any of those things and are clueless how to do them for real. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I may have left a few dates out. I don't remember. But I do have a lot to talk about my life. And I'll try to think of some funny stories. Not about dating, but about other things I've done. And so I hope you're all having a really great day and enjoying your life wherever you are in the world. And please do something kind for yourself and for someone else. Please feel free to leave your comments and your suggestions and ask me questions about some of these dates if you want. I can go into more detail if they're interestingly enough to share. So with that, thanks so much, everyone. Take care.